you're eating a toxic stew of all known types of weird poisons in the ocean when you eat these types of things.
So when I ate my all-you-can-eat crab, that really wasn't a good thing.
Probably not, no. But the thing about it is, back in 1981, I went to Greenleaf Golf and Country Club with a good friend of mine. His name was Henry Minks, and another friend by the name of Gene Dawes. And we went to an all-you-can-eat seafood buffet. And I remember I was sick, vomiting, physically unbelievably ill for almost 5 days, and so did Gene. We both got unbelievably sick from the seafood buffet. Henry, on the other side, he stayed with the clean meats. I mean, like grouper, red snapper, orange roughy, wild salmon. Those don't have those parasites. And so they're a lot healthier for you. So if you're going to eat seafood, eat the healthy seafood. Kind of stay on a coast.
Well, salmon's very good for you.
Well, as long as it's wild and not farm raised.
Sure.
Yeah, the farm raised salmon. If you look at the farm raised salmon, it's not even pink. They have to add the pink to it. They have to color it, and so it's kind of gross when you stop to think about that. I've seen.
But why is that?
Well, because of the food. They're usually feeding them soy pellets.
Oh,
soy pellets are not their natural food. They eat a lot of shrimp, and the shrimp basically color the skin and the internal meat of the salmon and all the other crustaceans that they're eating and all the other things that they're eating in the oceans. These salmon basically become that color. And that's what people don't realize. That when you feed a salmon, soy pellets or fish pellets exclusively, they don't turn pink. And so you got to call them salmon, but you got to color them. You got to put coloring in them. I was at a Sheraton one day, and we were having like the breakfast buffet, and they had the smoked salmon, and the whole plate covered in pink dye. It bled out of the salmon.
Oh, geez.
And that's when I finally realized just what was going on with the salmon. So unless it's wild salmon, which is very rare to get now, by the way, you have to ask for it, and most restaurants don't have it. You're going to get the colored salmon, especially if you're eating the lox.
Yeah, the grocery stores have it. People know to buy it, but when you get it in the restaurants, they don't give it to you, huh? It's
too pricey. It's a lot more money. So yeah, but that's number 4. So anyhow, but remember this too: a lobster is an arthropod, a cockroach is an arthropod. As far as I'm concerned, all a lobster is, Sarah, is the giant cockroach at the bottom of the ocean. That's all it is.
Oh, that's gross.
Well, that's what it is, though. And so and as long as you understand that, and it doesn't have an appeal to you. You don't think, wow, this is really good food. I'm going to go ahead and eat this. Now, don't get me wrong. I love lobster. I used to eat it all the time. I used to get steak. We used to get lobster and steak tips in Tallahassee at the Brown Brewery when I was in college up there. That was very inexpensive to eat that kind of stuff way back when. It was only like $6.99 a meal or whatever. And of course, minimum wage was $1.52.
Exactly. It's all relative.
Yes, I am that old. I'll be 61 here in a few weeks. And what's interesting about all of this, though, is just that shellfish in Florida, we have around 15 people a year die from shellfish poisoning here in Florida from parasitic infestations, what causes the death. It's a horrible death to go through. And, of course, the state of Florida doesn't promote that, doesn't promote the fact that, we've got alligators that eat people, and every known pit viper known to man down here in the southern states are in Florida. I mean, you have to be careful here in Florida when you're picking up a piece of wood or plastic or anything down by the water that there's not water moccasins underneath it. I mean, I have literally killed hundreds of water moccasins in the 60 years that I've lived here. I mean, it usually is at least 3 or 4 snakes a year we end up killing here that are water moccasins. These things can deliver a lethal bite of venom. And of course, we have the rattlesnakes, and we also have the copperheads, and we have the coral snakes. Like I said, pretty much every pit viper known to man is here in Florida, along with the alligators who like to eat people. But again, the state of Florida doesn't talk about those things, and it doesn't talk about the fact that we have people die from paralytic shellfish poisoning either. That's another thing that they don't.
But you do have the nice weather.
We do. We have the nice weather. We've got tremendous weather down here in Florida most of the time. In fact, it's just starting to turn real pretty again down here. It's middle of October, almost November, and it's looking real nice. We've got about 4 months out of the year that is just ridiculously hot, which you'd prefer to be in Montana at that time. Of course, Montana's getting a lot of hot weather in the summer now, too, during the day at least. And the nighttime is still cool there. But the thing about it is that Florida's got some beautiful weather, but so as long as you're willing to live behind a screen room for the mosquitoes, and make sure you have thresholds for your pool cage to make sure the snakes can't crawl under the doors and get in your pool. I remember one night, Sarah, this is years ago, we were living in another house and we didn't have thresholds for the screen room, and we had a pool that had a jacuzzi that was level with the swimming pool. And it was at night. My wife and I were out there. Gosh, it was back in the early '90s, and we were out there basically just chilling out, sitting in the hot tub. It was like whatever. February, I don't remember what month it was. And basically, I reached in the big pool to splash some cold water on my face, and a snake wrapped around my arm. I don't make anything up, okay? A snake wrapped around my arm. I couldn't believe it. I screamed, threw the snake up. It came off my arm, hit the top of the screen room, landed back in the water. And we had to go get a net and catch the thing and kill it. And it was, of course, a water moccasin. And I'm like, my gosh, I mean, it's like living with the pit vipers here. You know, this is awful.
Jeez.
But it's just so.
But you love it. You've been there your whole life.
Well, no, but yes, but I've traveled. But you're right, though. But what I do now is we have another home now, and the pool, the hot tub is elevated 3 feet above the
yeah,
big
you
pool.
keep yourself safe.
Yeah, and also we have thresholds under the doors now, so things can't crawl in. And so and of course you get the occasional frog you got to get out of the pool and all that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting place to live when you're living basically down here in a swamp. And so you have to realize the swamp things were here first. We're not going to get rid of them. I remember a few years ago when the alligators were on the quote endangered species list, which was a complete and total joke. There were very few alligators in the lakes that had people swimming in them because people got tired of being, bitten or eaten by gators, and so they started shooting these things and getting them out of the water and leaving them in the Everglades where they belonged and not in residential lakes. And what ended up happening is they finally put them on the endangered species list, and now they're off of that, of course. And now we have to have the game service come in every so often and hook and bait gators in our lake so that we can swim in the lake safely without worrying about a gator attack. Because remember, you're swimming basically with a prehistoric relic. I mean, some of these things get to be 18, 19 feet long, and they weigh thousands of pounds.
Jeez,
I mean, these are large animals.
They're the dinosaurs that still made it. So
That's
what
right.
We only have a little bit of time left, and I could talk to you all day long. So what is the next item on the list?
Well, number 5 on the list to stay away from is the junk food category: Twinkies, Ding Dongs, cupcakes.
That's obvious, right?
Well, yeah, and again, if you go to if you go to healthmasters.com, we got the whole top 10 list listed there. If we don't get done with it today, it's okay. Or we can come back on another show and finish this list. If you get a good response on this, it's fine too. But number 5 is the junk food category: Twinkies, Ding Dongs, cupcakes, anything that contains high fructose corn syrup, anything that contains artificial colors or artificial dyes.
And junk food also includes like potato chips and Cheetos and things like that.
Well, anything that basically is from the large manufacturers that's not organic is going to be bad, because remember, almost all of the major crops now, wheat, corn, all of these things are sprayed with glyphosate, which is Roundup, right before harvest if they're not organic, 4 to 5 days before harvest. And what it does, it causes them to basically die. It makes it easier for the combines to come in and get a higher crop yield. The problem is everything that we're eating now is being soaked in glyphosate. So you got to be really, really careful. And I personally believe this is also one of the factors that's going to be linked to autism is the glyphosate. And of course, that's brought to us by everybody's favorite corporation, Monsanto, which has just been bought up by Bayer. And Monsanto, got to bring us their Agent Orange product and all the stuff that we had in Vietnam and all of the poisons. But Monsanto has been getting basically eviscerated in the alternative news because of what they've done and what they've been involved in. So, guys, glyphosate or Roundup is an incredibly toxic product. It's been linked to multiple cancers. In fact, if we had time today, which we don't, we can on the next show, we actually have internal documents from Monsanto that were obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, linking like a dozen different types of cancers that they knew Monsanto's glyphosate Roundup caused all the way back into the 70s, 40 years ago.
Oh, that's terrible.
But we got the research.
I know you have the studies, you got the research, and we're not doing anything about it. What is, Monsanto being bought by Bayer? The name's going to get changed. I would assume they're going to do a big PR change because it's
Bayer will probably absorb Monsanto, and the name Monsanto is going to go away because it's basically linked to skull and crossbones now, and of course it's responsible for the Dark Act that was again signed by Obama and passed by our completely corrupt, well, I shouldn't say completely, probably 50 to 60% corrupt Congress. And, and people say,
not everybody's corrupt. There are people trying to make a difference.
No, it's probably 40% are pretty good. But the problem is, it's like J. Edgar Hoover said. He said, I don't have to have 50% I don't have to have 100% of the people in Congress and the Senate, doing what I tell them to do. I only have to have a little over 50%. They can't do anything with that. They can't.
I know.
With 50, they can't override a veto. They can't do anything. So they can't do anything, if I got 50% or 51%. We can pretty much keep everything in line. And the way they do that is a lot of these congressmen, they go up there with good intentions. A lot of them don't. A lot of them do. But they may like the ladies. They may be pedophiles. They may be on drugs. They may be who knows what. And what they do is they find out what they like if they have a weakness, and they get them on film or they get them on tape or they get them on whatever. And they basically use that to force them to vote certain ways at certain times.
The Hoover, they've taken the Hoover playbook.
Pretty much. And that's what they do. That's why it's so corrupt. I mean, when we had Fast and Furious, nothing happened. When we had IRS Gate, nothing happened. When we had Benghazi, nothing happened. I mean, nothing happens because Congress doesn't do anything, because they need to be replaced because they've been bought and paid for.
Well, and they also, if they don't get the money, they won't get reelected, because money really, right? I mean, the people are voting for whoever is advertised and who the money follows. If you don't get the money, it's really hard to get elected.
That goes back to the Edward Bernays playbook. You know, you remember primarily you remember two different ways, and they know this. You remember through repetition, and you remember through emotion. In other words, you're too young for this, but anybody who was alive when John F. Kennedy was shot, you remember exactly where you were when you found out that John F. Kennedy was shot and he was killed. You know, you remember exactly. I was on the bus coming home from school.
Well, that's what it's like for 9/11. Anybody who's been through that, you just remember
that. Exactly right.
You remember the whole day.
That's right. You remember the whole day because of the emotion, and then of course the next phase is repetition. You know, if you tell the lie big enough and long enough, people begin to believe it. And Stalin and both Lenin said, if you blame the person who's opposing you for doing the exact same things that you're doing, then what happens is you confuse it too much and people start believing the lie. And that's what Hitler said. If you tell a big enough lie long enough, people start believing the lie. I mean, this is what advertising and marketing has done. This is what they've done when they're theta brainwave states of the TV and the beta brainwave states that we've talked about. And this is how they program the entire population of the country. They've dumbed them down with glyphosate. They've dumbed them down with fluoride. They've dumbed them down with the GMO foods. They've dumbed them down with all of the high fructose corn syrup. They've dumbed them down with the tricyclic antidepressants and the serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They've dumbed them down with statin drugs, which are one of the most poisonous drugs you can put in your body. You should never use a statin drug to reduce cholesterol. There's all kinds of natural ways to do it without cholesterol.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question though. Is a lot we know that a lot of these things do this to us, but now was it just kind of like happenstance? Because I have a hard time believing that all these people are doing it purposely. Because I think it takes a few people that might be doing it purposely, and the rest of them just are doing it to make money and all these. I just don't think it's that conscious.
No, the vast majority of the population doesn't even know what's going on. They're mindless sheep. If you read a book, it was done at the end of World War II. It's called Pawns in the Game. Pawns, P-A-W-N, like a chess pawn. Pawns in the Game. That's one of the best books you're ever going to read on this topic as far as how we're being manipulated. And remember, it all started back at the University of Leipzig. It all started with classical and opera conditioning with Skinner. And it was all moved into the classrooms to basically train us like laboratory animals. This has been going on for like 150 years or so now. That's been in earnest by the global, quote, elite. The international banking cartels, the international banking corporations, the ones that run the money supply, the ones that basically run the Exchange Stability Fund. You guys can watch a video on that on YouTube. This is also being done by the Council of 300. It's being done by the Bilderberger Group. It's being done by the folks who go Bohemian Grove. All of these different groups of people are all involved in working together to bring in a one world government under the United Nations, under 1,000 Points of Light speech that George Bush introduced back in 1991. I mean, you got to go into the whole picture of what's going on, but you're absolutely right. The vast majority of the people in the United States that are using these products that are poisoning them have no idea what they're doing or why they're doing it. But even the people, even the corporations that are selling it and doing it, how many of these people know that they're actually contributing to things that are so unhealthy for people? Oh, probably a lot of those. And remember what Wells Fargo just did.
Well, Wells Fargo, yes.
They set up thousands. These employees set up thousands of dummy accounts, thousands of fraudulent accounts to get their bonuses in. Millions of accounts. And now they're being fined because of what they did. And all of these employees who knew what they were doing wrong did what was wrong because they knew it was wrong. And the ones who quit and said, we're not going to do this, now they have a class action lawsuit filed.
Yeah, because they were getting fired. Right? Yeah, that was a bad situation. But do you think the people that work in the food industry and so forth, do you think they're just kind of thinking that it's not that bad? Yeah, it's bad. It's like ding dongs and Twinkies. We all know they're bad for us, but they taste good and it just kind of goes with the territory? Or do you think that they actually know how bad this is for us?
I think the upper and mid-level management probably don't really care. They don't pay attention to it. However, the very top echelon of management, the CEOs and all these guys, they know what's going on. They understand what's going on because they're the ones that are in that position to push all of these agendas. And also remember, there's a fiduciary responsibility for a CFO or CEO for a corporation to increase the profits of the shareholders as much as possible.
Well, that's what I mean. So they might justify it by, I can't not sell these